Hello and welcome to From Field to Skin, a series of interviews chronicling Ash Alberg's adventures in the Canadian fibre shed. Our 10th episode features hennah verhoeven and was recorded in Chibuktuk on unceded Mi'kmaq territory. You can find hennah on Instagram as Twigligs, TWIGLINGSS, or visit etsy.com/shop/twiglings, just one S. For more, follow From Field to Skin on Instagram or visit fromfieldtoskin.com. I am here with hennah in Halifax, and hennah is a natural dyer and fashion design student at NASCAD, and you're close to graduating now, right?
Yeah, very close.
Almost done.
Almost done.
Amazing. We connected by the magic of the Instagrams, but also have lots of humans in common.
Yes.
I was actually talking to someone earlier today about how this whole project in general with From Field to Skin is still something that is not totally structured in my brain, and there's lots of gray areas, and one of those gray areas is figuring out which natural dyers I talk to and feature on the map and which ones I don't, because I feel like there are a lot of ways that you can be working with natural dyes and still not at all be engaging with the fiber shed, and then other times where you're sometimes engaging with the fiber shed and sometimes not, and there's so many reasons for that, and a lot of it comes down to what are the practicalities of your business model, and then there's people who are only working with fiber shed, which is magical, but I don't think I know anybody who's doing that, who's doing it at a commercial level either. So you work with both foraged and purchased natural dyes, and you also work a lot with knits, but knit fabrics, not knitting.
Yeah.
So explain everything to me about this. What's your personal fiber journey been up to this point?
From the very, very beginning?
Yeah. As far back as you feel like going.
Yeah. I think that my grandma and mom are definitely and great grandma are definitely the biggest people who pushed me into textiles, and my aunt, they're all very crafty people, and my grandma definitely taught me how to sew, and my grandma has many times tried to teach me how to knit and crochet, but I'm can only knit arm warmers because they're a tube with a hole in it.
A lot of things are also that, but I understand.
Yeah. So I feel I was very fortunate growing up that my family has all been very supportive of me being a crafts person, and my family live rurally in Alberta, and so there's definitely this very strong idea that has always been pushed through of doing things yourself, and my aunt likes to talk about the idea of one day she'll have sheep and then we can spin it into yarn together, and then I can dye it and my mom can weave it, and I'm that's really dreamy. And so my mom has brought me to textile conventions, and my mom's a weaver, and I think it's just always been a part of my life, going to country fairs and entering in country fairs, and there's always quilting, and it's always been pretty big, and I think that I'm a very resourceful person, and I've always been really interested in altering clothing. For a long time, altering clothing very badly and making things that did not fit and were very ugly, but I was I made this. I'm so proud of myself. And I think I have some very strong memories of making these really horrid things and just being amazed that you could do that. So I've always been really into thrifting and buying things for this one pocket, or these buttons, or always just transforming things, and I guess always through high school and junior high cutting things up and sewing patches on them, and dunking them in India ink and like tie-dyeing things. Yeah, I think it's always been a pretty big part of my life. But I never took it seriously.
Right.
Because I guess it like...
Nobody tells you can do it
Yeah,
seriously.
no one's like, this could be the thing that you're passionate about and that you're going to dedicate a bunch of your life to. Because I feel like craft is still viewed as very like below art. And art is still not even legitimized as a practice and like a job.
Totally.
As a way that you can like have like a life and an income and stuff. So craft being beneath that, I think that was like
even worse.
That's not even like who even does that. But then I started going to NASCAD 4 years ago. And I started screen printing at the Arc and then at Inkstorm, and then I was like, oh, this is great, I love doing this because I love sewing patches on everything. And then I like would always just like randomly mend things, and then started taking some classes, and then it just like I was in school for painting, and then it just like totally shifted. I was like, textiles, everything. I was like, wow, these are all the things I like actually love doing and I'm like very obsessed with. But now I get to like do it more and like actually do it well.
Yes.
And like meeting so many people who, you know, I feel like it's opened up like a whole community of people that I never would have met, or like it's like opened me up to like a lot of experiences that I never would have had. Or imagined even. So it's been a journey.
Cool.
And it will continue to be a journey, for sure.
Do you have plans of, like, now that you're almost done, the schooling side of it, or like the official schooling side of it for now, do you have plans of what the immediate future is going to be looking like?
Yeah. The immediate future. I think that it's still this thing where I'm trying to figure out how to do the processes that I enjoy and still make the things that I want to and make it accessible, but also like make a living.
Yes.
So that is something that I think will forever be a hard thing to go through. Yeah,
I feel like it's a conversation that, especially when you're like living and working within communities where most people are not middle or upper class, and you're working with a lot of folks who are working class, and like living at or below the poverty line, then the idea of asking for what capitalism says your value should be based on your experience and expertise and amount that you've dedicated to a practice, if you were to look at it from, like, I often say, if like I was an IT professional, nobody would question my rates, and as is, it's constantly questioned, even though like at this rate, you know, we've got training that would be the equivalent of a PhD in something, but if you were to try and charge that as a craftsperson, it would just never happen. And then it's also this thing of like, do you actually want to charge things at a point where it's outside of accessibility for your friends? But then the counter argument to that is, if you're not stable enough in order to be able to like not be constantly stressed and worried about, can you pay rent this month, or can you like afford property so that you're not at the whim of a landlord, and you happen to live in a city where that's theoretically feasible, and like you're not worried about, you know, is the electricity going to be turned off, or are you going to be able to eat healthy food, or like if your dog gets sick, will you be able to take it to the vet? Then if you're constantly worrying about that stuff, you can't actually be that helpful for your community. Whereas if you were stable enough to not have those concerns, then you'd be able to have a lot more freedom to make decisions that is like, yes, I will donate my time and volunteer for this thing to work with youth, or I will, you know, take some of the time that I would have spent working, and instead I'm going to be able to like spend time making an item for somebody who's going through a shitty time. and it's like this thing that we often don't think about, but within capitalism, then it like having stability gives you a lot more freedom to fuck with the system than if you're constantly unstable.
Definitely. Yeah, and I think that is such a prevalent thing that I think about constantly is like, okay, I like want to make these things, but who's actually benefiting from them if no one can afford it? Like,
totally.
Only this like upper class who like I'm not in touch with, and I'm not making stuff that has people in like an upper class lifestyle. Like, that's not where my design, I'm not doing it for them and not thinking of them.
Yeah.
And that's not who I have in mind as like my clientele, I guess. So I think that mostly makes like my big extravagant weird things that take a long time and have a lot of love in them, and then charge what like a kind of middle ground.
Yeah.
And then I do like smaller things that are like affordable but also like still really full of love and like are really still fun for me to make. Like, so I think that having like a balance of those things lets me kind of like fulfill a lot of things that I'm looking for. Like having like that creative freedom to just like go really far out there, and then also knowing that I can make stuff that people can actually have and enjoy. And another huge thing for me, definitely, that is part of my life now, but will hopefully continue to be a bigger part of my life in the future, is teaching. I think that knowledge is power, and I think that one of the biggest things about craft is like, if you want people to respect craft and understand craft and like want or like realize that craft is something worth putting money into, then you need to like educate them and show them how things are made and like how long things actually take, and just like get them involved, because then they're more interested in it, they're more engaged with it, they like have a greater desire to support you, because they're like, oh shit, I know that takes a long time and it's lovely, and like I want this because it's you put your time and energy into this, and like it comes from like a whole history of the background of that particular practice. And then the more people that know how to like mend their own clothes or like make their own things, the less I think like that slowly makes us less dependent on capitalism, the more that we can like enrich and support our communities and help them be more self-sustainable. And that's like one of the big privileges that I've had of going to post-secondary and learning all of these things and having access to like these resources. And I think about privilege a lot in craft, and like how it is a privilege to be able to decide that you're going to rely on your skills. And so to me, the other side of that, to be responsible with that privilege, is to like take all of these things that I spent thousands of dollars in tuition to learn and like giving them back in like workshops or classes that are like way less expensive, so that people can like start to like learn and depend on themselves.
I think it's a really like education is such a huge part of it, and then it's like you're again in this situation of like, how do you make sure that you are stable enough that you're able to be teaching people who wouldn't normally be able to access it at a way that it is accessible for them, and then also not like undervaluing your work. Like I've been listening to podcasts by people who work in graphic design and in like the tech side of the creative economy, and where like they're actually creatives. I have a lot. There's like, I can't remember what his name is, but there's this one dude who is regularly referred to in a lot of curriculum, and he talks about the creative economy and how that impacts cities, but he's full of shit because he's like a totally privileged white dude who talks about how the gays and bohemians make cities more interesting. I'm like, fuck you, buddy. But part of it is that he refers to creatives in this really broad sense and like talks about like doctors and lawyers and IT people as creatives. And I'm like, your idea of what creative means
is very different.
Very different. Like so different. Like the people you're talking about have like really large homes and no debt and like were able to pay off school super fast. And it's like, I don't know anybody, you know, they're able to like pay off their student debt in a single year's salary. And also still have savings. Which is just a confusing thing to do, right?
People do that.
Yeah. But there are folks that work within tech that it is also like my idea of creative. Often it's graphic designers and folks like that, but of course they're making a very different income generally than what we are making. And hearing them talk about like, well, how can you make your workshops more accessible? Like maybe if you lower the price, and I'm thinking like, fuck, people already don't value our work at this point because they don't understand the value because they don't have the education. But then how do you like make that like how do you make the education accessible without then continuing to undervalue your work? And I feel like there's no perfect answer, but it's kind of like figuring out like an in between. Like with this, like I never want these interviews to go behind a paywall because I feel like that defeats the entire purpose of From Field to Skin, which is to get people understanding more about the fiber shed and the different ways that it can look and the ways that you can engage with it. But I'm also like, my workshops, if somebody contacts me and is like, I want you to come and teach, if you're not like you know, an after school program working with disadvantaged youth, then I'm going to charge you my full price.
Yeah.
Because your clientele, in theory, should, like if they're going to drop money at your store, then they can drop money on me if they want to. Like if that is where their value is, cool. Pay me what I'm worth. And then that gives me the freedom to go and work with those disadvantaged youth without worrying about whether my mortgage is going to bounce. So, but yeah, like I don't know what the solution to that is.
I don't know, and I feel like it's I feel like it was constructed this way.
Yeah.
That like crafts people will struggle forever.
Constantly, forever.
I think that
they don't want us to survive the zombie apocalypse.
They don't. I mean, but we will.
Yeah, exactly.
Because we'll be so crafty.
It's true. We'll be like, we're fine. Like, give us some sheep, we're good.
We're totally fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I teach screen printing workshops at Restorm, which are like a sliding scale.
Right.
But that works because there's other people who pay their studio fees monthly, and then there's like 2 other collectives that help offset like sustain that space financially. Yeah. So in terms of what that would look like in a different system, like an individual way, I'm not sure. You know, like I have dreams of like one day I'll have like a studio where like me and my friends will like make stuff together and sell it and we'll teach things. Yeah. But you know, I would like to see some version of that happen, but I also don't necessarily believe in having to like reinvent the wheel every time. Like, I don't need to start my whole own new thing. I just need space to do what I already do.
Yeah, exactly.
And right now that's like in my home, and that's fine for the scale that I'm at. Yeah.
But if you're going to scale up.
If I'm going to scale up, it would be different. Another thing that I've been doing is like having, like I have a friend right now that I am working with, and you know, they're very excited about making stuff and have like some knowledge in that, but you know, I have all this training, and so we're like doing it together, and I'm like, you know, showing them a little bit here and there where their knowledge is missing. Yeah. So that's definitely a way that I am really interested in engaging with people that feels like mutually beneficial. Yeah, totally. It's like working collaboratively on a shared vision, because then it's like, yes, I I'm using my skills, but like you're bringing this whole other range of skills.
Yeah.
And if I can like quickly show you, if you have like the base knowledge, and I can quickly show you how to do like a few things,
yeah,
and then we can produce something together,
yeah,
then it's faster.
yes,
it's easier, and then you can like, you know, eventually get to a point where you can like kind of like hand off certain aspects.
yeah,
At least in like the work that I am doing. So then, you know, I don't, and like, you know, we're still not getting paid as much as we should be, but
right.
it's
It's
because
a step.
it's a step, definitely, and like because there's two of us doing it together, you know, all those material costs get split in half
Right, yeah.
between us, and like we're gonna open a bank account soon.
Right, that's
And
exciting.
it's like it's great, you know. So it is. I think collaboration is really exciting, and yeah, I think that collaborating is really important to also grow communities and like share knowledge for sure. Because then you're like trusting someone and like showing them that you believe in them
Yep.
in like a really big way.
The way that you're referring to this, I'm like, I have very little trust in humans. I love collaborating with people, but in ways where like neither of us is actually stuck with one another for extent. Like I don't share a bank account with anyone, and I don't plan on sharing a bank account with anyone. And I'm like, maker spaces are a great idea. I would love to have a space where I can like host lots of amazing people. Don't want anybody else actually involved in the bills side of it, because like, which is resulting from various parts of trauma of my life. But
That's
like,
fair.
yeah, there's definitely, which is also the way that the system works, right? It's like they in quotations.
Imposing
Yeah,
they.
exactly. I don't want you to be able to rely on other people or to collaborate with people or to create like gifting economies and a sense of community where you are not reliant on large outside systems that are designed to keep you oppressed to function.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely it's been interesting. Like it's been really good so far, but it's definitely not, you know, this is like a new thing for me. I think in like other parts of my practice, I am not a collaborator.
Yeah, totally.
Like when it comes to like drawing, I'm like, no one
No way.
get close to this.
Yeah. I feel like maybe I'm just like old and bitter across the board, and you're like, there's still bits of you that are like willing to deal with other people's shit.
Yeah, it definitely it's not like I'm just like willy-nilly going out into the streets and be like, who wants to like share a bank account with me? Like it's definitely very specific, and there definitely has to be like a level of like mutual respect and connection that's already built up.
Yeah. But it's amazing to get to that point with anyone.
Definitely, yeah. And it's really, yeah. No, I think that there's definitely like, I think that's where boundaries become important, and like, yeah. But it's also really exciting because then you just like can get to places that you never would have gone to by yourself.
Yes, that's a huge part of it. Yeah. There's like very little that I actually think back of my master's degree, which was not in textiles. There's very little that I think back on that degree with fondness for. Sorry to anybody who is watching this that was part of that degree. But there definitely the bits of like coming together with people with completely different practices than you and making work that you never would have otherwise. Like absolutely. The work that I created as a result of that degree with the weird group of people that I was mashed up with, it has shifted the way that I do art now and have done art since then. Like it fundamentally changed the way that I approach art in like ways in terms of being like, I never fucking want to do that again, but also in ways of like, this was really fascinating and nourishing, and it is a theme that has now continued on for years.
Yeah.
Just never want to do it again in that space. This is what I get for like processing all of the things this week. I'm like, there's all these things that I don't actually
Sitting
want
on the level, top level.
Yeah, totally. Okay, I'm gonna kick my yarn out of the way. So we've drifted slightly away from fiber shed, but what does, especially as someone who is often working with thrifted fibers, so it's like not necessarily like you just made a really beautiful jacket using a very strange mix of items and it looks awesome,
Yes.
but it's like bamboo knit, which is like not a fiber shed thing, but you work with a lot of thrifted items, which sort like, I'm not quite sure how this fits in, but I feel like it's a part of fiber shed that we do need to look into, because items that are now within your geographic proximity that are like they've already been produced. These are now items that we are refusing to just pop into the landfill. And so they like, I feel as though they do become items within the fiber shed at that point, because you're now reusing items that are not new products. You're using textiles that exist within your footprint, your direct footprint, and then you're using natural dyes on top of that. So talk to me a little bit about how you engage, and you also use a lot of furs and skins, which makes me really happy. So talk to me a bit about your relationship with the fiber shed.
I think that to just like start a bit away from there to like lead up to there, the way that I have learned about slow fashion and like modern slow fashion and like how that's looking in the current moment is that there's kind of two routes that slow fashion takes. And so one would be reusing the materials that are already around because there's so much of it and like there's so much textile waste. It's one of, you know, fashion is, I think it's like the first or
largest,
second,
I think,
after oil, like
exactly.
dirtiest
industry in the world.
And so there's people, artists and designers and textile artists and everything that, you know, take all of those secondhand items and then like recreate them into new objects or like upcycling them or whatever. And then there's this other route, which is like this kind of like beautiful marriage of like textiles and science and engineering, where people are innovating new materials and textiles that have like a closed life cycle, which is really interesting. And a lot of it's based in like biomimicry and like genetic, like GMO things. Like someone is currently like working on this thing of how to like genetically modify plants so that their roots literally grow into clothing. Like that's
super cool.
It's really cool. Like there's so many things happening in that world that are like really, really interesting, and I think they are really important and need to happen. But then ultimately we get to the same point that we were talking about before, where like those things are only being done by people who have the funding to put that research in, and then ultimately those garments or textiles are only going to be accessible to a upper class who is, first of all, like knows about it. It's like all like cares.
Well, and I think the thing that drives me nuts about the way that we look at how we're using resources within the world, this sidetrack, sorry, but is the fact that like it's constantly this thing of like we're using too many resources, and like yes, absolutely 100%. What we are doing right now is not sustainable, but the we is actually bullshit.
It's actually very
because
small.
It's I think it's the stat that I saw, and don't 100% quote me on this, but I'll try and look it up, is that 90% of the resources in the world across the board, all resources, so that includes the resources that go into fashion, are used by the top 10% class-wise in the world. So it's like it's those multi-billionaires, not millionaires, because they're not part of it.
Past that.
The multi-billionaires who are so fucking wasteful, and they're using all of these things. And so the rest of us, when it's like, oh, well, you know, the world is going to shit, and it's because you used, you know, a straw. Which drives me to that whole conversation drives me nuts, because it's also like so ableist, but anyway,
So
sidetrack.
ableist, yeah.
Sidetrack. But, and then it's this thing of like, here we'll guilt the collective consciousness. And in reality, it's industry and the top 10% who are truly fucking over the world.
Yeah.
And all the rest of y'all can carry the guilt because they don't.
Yeah.
So that drives me nuts. But anyway, back to what we were discussing about upcycling.
Yes. All of that. Yes, for sure. Upcycling, yeah, so I think that that's where my work falls into, is the upcycling. So when I'm not, if I'm, basically I try and get all my raw materials either from like thrift stores or like people give me a lot of fabric and I just have a lot of fabric.
Yeah.
Because I'm a collector, hoarder.
Nester.
A nester. Yeah. So I think that if I'm not doing that, I make it, I have to like really dig around and search for, if I'm buying like new fabric, I have like I have high standards of what I want from a new fabric, because if I'm going to put the money into buying a new fabric, then I might as well actually get something that's worth it.
Yeah.
Which is also hard because I am a student. I'm a crafts person, so like when I am putting money into fabric, it's like I'm really putting money into fabric.
Yeah, totally.
So right now,
like the dogs can just come in if they're like having some feels, like deprived of puppy days right now.
Oh.
Apparently Willow doesn't even miss me.
Oh no.
I don't know if that's true or not, but she doesn't seem to miss me. Not moping, which I suppose is good. But.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so when I am buying fabric, I have like this one place that I mostly buy all my knitwear, and it's usually all like bamboo, which still has like a lot of issues.
Yeah.
But for like what I financially can manage,
I
usually buy from this place in Ontario that it's like Simply Life or Simply.
Oh, Simplify Fabric?
Simplify.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm like, cool, it's like organic, bamboo, and like small Canadian business.
Yeah.
So like that is what I am like really comfortable with their fabric. Like it dyes really nicely.
Yeah.
I have bought from them many times. And like financially, that's like this place that I'm like,
this is what is feasible.
This is what's feasible, and I don't feel terrible about buying from them.
And I think that that's a big part of it too, right? Is this conversation of understanding that basically 99% of the time there's going to be some compromise somewhere. Like, it takes so much privilege to be able, and especially class privilege, to be able to access perfect, in parentheses, solutions on a regular basis all the time. Like, most of us are having to make decisions in some area in terms of like, what am I able to do right now in this moment based on all of my life circumstances?
Yeah.
So, I think that's fair.
Definitely, I think that there's so much classism that exists in
slow fashion. It's true.
It's like, I am trying my best, but like...
Stop yelling at me.
People are like, but was it like hand spun by people in your local community, by sheep that you knew like your whole life, and I'm like, I wish. I really, really wish.
Yeah. And
but,
if it is, it's like you have a couple of garments maybe.
Yeah.
But it's not like your entire wardrobe.
No. You know, and like so like I definitely do what I can where I can. But that's why thrifted stuff is so great.
Yeah.
Like, and I tell people, like, people when they want clothes from me, I tell them straight up, I'm like, that was a bed sheet, or like, this was whatever. Like, I think that being transparent about as much of my process is really something that is important to me. In everything, like, I will tell, you know, I'll be like, this was a bed sheet, and like, this is how many hours I did this for, and this is what materials I used, like, very detailed list so that people, like, know when they look at it. Like, I have these, like, these funny like lists that I just like fill out, and they're like this huge thing. And I'm like, wow, okay, like just wanted a receipt.
You're like, here, understand the process.
Yeah, like I'm kind of like, oh, like every garment should come with like a little book that's like, hi, this is where I came from.
Yeah.
Let me tell you all about me.
Well, and I feel like if we functioned more like that, then it would also be less of a shocker, and also then you have again a more educated public. Like this week that we are filming, that this will not come out in, but there's bullshit hitting the fan again with companies like Lucky Brand and Duluth Trading Company putting out like anti-wool products, which is super fucking hypocritical because both companies already sell products with leather and or wool, but then these items they're specifically so it's like not actually a company that has vegan principles. It's just like a company that is deciding to profit off of people who don't bother to do any education of themselves or of the companies that they're purchasing from. But it's like it totally, they're like proud of the fact that it's polyester. I'm like, that's fucking plastic.
That's
and
so
the
bad.
reason that people don't know that this is bullshit is because we're so removed from textile production in our normal lives these days that people don't understand that what you're saying is actually bullshit, and they've been fed this crap from you and a marketing company, and then also crap from like PETA, who don't actually care about animals and just care about like making ridiculous claims that
Like
aren't
shock
actually
factor.
Yeah, exactly. It's like not backed up by science, not actually concerned about animal welfare, because if you do what they are suggesting, then it's actually like bad for the animals. And in often cases is like what you are recommending is mass extinction of this entire species, because this entire species has grown for thousands of years and evolved to not be able to do this thing that you want them to do. So, but like the public doesn't know that, and so to them they're thinking like, oh, I just saw that like PETA ad a few years ago with like a bloody lamb that was killed after shearing, because they don't know what shearing is, and then or like they see sheepskin products and they don't understand that like people don't raise sheep in order to just make a sheepskin. Like sheepskins are as a result of either byproducts of the meat industry or an old sheep that has died of natural causes usually, or like there was a terrible accident on the farm, which is a reality and happens with humans too. And so it's like just it's lack of education and ignorance from people where we're not giving them the education, and so like it's fair that they don't have that education. And it's just like an ongoing process to fix that. But then you have like large companies that are given the trust from the public that are then like, here, let's like take advantage of the fact that people don't know what our processes are on the back end, and we're not going to show them our production facilities, and we're not going to show them the process of like building this factory on this land that has displaced all of these animals and all of the pollution that we're pouring straight into the waterways and like not bothering to treat. Drives me nuts.
Yeah. Definitely, me too. Yeah, I think that it comes back to what we were talking about earlier of like displacing hello puppies. Like displacing like where things are actually corrupted. Like people are like, oh, it's like these people use wool, but it's like actually these companies, or like I think
placing blame on things that are not actually to blame.
Definitely. I think that like using, I mean, I was vegan for a while and I've been vegetarian for like 12 years, but like I still use fur and leather, but I use like, you know, secondhand fur and leather, or like animals that I skinned myself, or like ones that my friends did. They like traded to me, like
it's like being involved in the process.
And now that I have had the experience of like skinning an animal before, I feel close to that process, obviously, and feel more comfortable using fur and leather, because I feel like I'm not just like, oh, this nice fur thing. Like, I actually know what went into this being here in front of me.
And the gross bits that like if you don't actually care, then you're not going to want to engage with that. It's like when I see
Yeah.
people with like, oh look, I have this really pretty skull. I'm like, did you watch the bugs eat it? Because like once you do that and you smell that smell,
that smell,
which is the most disgusting, but also sort of weirdly satisfying. Then like yeah, now we can talk about collecting bones. But if you're not willing to engage and at least understand, like you don't need to do it personally. Like I don't know that I would be comfortable butchering an animal unless I was in like a survival situation. Then 100% I can do it. But like on a normal day basis, I don't want to be butchering animals. I'm comfortable doing it with fish, but not other like four-legged animals. But knowing what the process is I think important in then engaging with that ethically, because if you're going to consume those products in whatever way, whether you're eating them or using the byproducts or whatever, if you know what has gone into it, then you can do it with more like reverence for what you're about to engage in, rather than just like casually thinking about like it being separated from you.
Yeah, I think that our whole like Western culture is just built on disconnection and convenience.
Yeah.
Like I think about that so often. Like I don't really drink milk or eat eggs, but once in a while if I'm like, oh, there's no rice milk, or use milk, or like I'm gonna eat this like shitty cheese or like whatever, I'm like eating it and immediately have like this montage of like factory farming and going through my head. I'm like, I'm a terrible person, what am I doing? But it's like so, it's everywhere and it's easy, and that's what we've been kind of like normalized to do, and like normalized to be like, this is always here, I can just always go get this.
Exactly.
And it's the same with textiles and like fast fashion.
Yep.
Is that we're normalized into this culture of being like, where do clothes come from? I don't know, I just like go to the store
and buy them.
Yeah. And then, once in a while we hear about these, like giant travesties of like textile production factories like collapsing and killing thousands of people.
Yeah.
And that's like the only time that people are kind of like, oh, like that.
The whole process of how that was made was terrible. Like like we're taking advantage of like people far away that we don't have to look at, and that's like, which is I think sort of why fiber shed makes sense to me. Like I remember reading an article or a blog post not too long ago about how the idea that local automatically equals good is not true, and there's lots of ways of engaging with folks who are not local to you but are producing items in an ethical way for the environment and for people. And so just automatically assuming that local is good does not make sense. But the thing with local and the idea with fiber shed is that you at least have an easier time checking things, and I think that that's where it makes sense to me in terms of like, if you have a question, you can actually go to these places and you can see what like you can ask them like, what is your process, or you can see like, how are these things actually being made, and then if you're uncomfortable with it, then you can make that decision in a much easier way, rather than all these super complex, really far apart steps that happen within the fast fashion world that are designed to be intentionally obtuse for a normal person to be able to track back, because it's so fucked up the way that they're making profit.
I mean, there's also, I think, this really terrible but like funny, because it's so terrible, thing that's been going on for a while. It's just like large companies trying to get this like cultural capital on like green products, or like artisanal.
And it's like a gigantic multinational corporation talking about like handmade artisanal products. It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Like I saw this really funny Roots ad recently that was it's like everything's in black and white. There's like some like slow folk music and like it's all these people at workbenches like happily pounding away at their like leather, and they're like, Roots, authentically Canadian, blah 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 blah, and like
you're like, no, you use commercial tanneries like overseas that are causing huge amounts of pollution. Like, oh my god.
And they're just like taking all these things that people in like probably local fiber sheds are like using as like this is
Yeah.
actually
Here's the actual process of doing this.
and they're like, oh, like let's jump on that because it really appeals to people to be like ecologically friendly.
Yeah.
And that's like such a hot trend right now.
Yes.
Of, like putting everything in like a brown wrapping and like putting this stamp on it.
Yes.
And it's like
manipulating the public.
So many, and it also again goes into this idea that like the consumer is ultimately responsible for the fate of the earth.
Yeah.
And it's like if you buy this dish soap instead of this one, then like you're either gonna like kill the world or save it.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's all up to you, and it's like it's not.
Actually,
like I want it to be, but it's not. So I think that it's just like it's like funny but annoying.
It's annoying because we know that it's wrong, but it's also funny because it's like this
so
is working.
Dumb.
Like you know that it's working.
Like
though.
People love this.
Oh God. Okay, so I like all of our tangents. Okay, so now that we've discussed the public just like not knowing, what do you think stops people from engaging with the fiber shed, and then what are easy ways for them to engage with it?
Why do people not engage with it?
Mm-hmm.
I think that I think that some people are maybe deterred from interacting with their local fiber shed because I think when people think, like, their immediate association with like hand knitted or hand spun or like hand woven, whatever, like are immediately pictured in this like very traditional, like historic, like it's very dated.
Yeah.
And I don't think like that many people can like view their life.
Yeah.
Like how those two come together in like a modern sense.
Yeah.
Because if you aren't really engaged in a textile community, then you're probably not aware of all these like modern textile designers and makers.
Yeah.
So I think that it's partly because craft is still viewed as really dated.
Yeah. That's a really good point.
Yeah. And then people are like, what am I gonna do with the like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
So I think that's definitely part of it. And so I think that maybe just like the more that like craftspeople have their stuff in different places, and like the more that people are viewing craft in like a modern take, they're gonna be more open to that. But then also I think that the thing that deters it craft is that like craft is only seen, I mean it's opening up definitely because of like Instagram and like social media, but mostly craft I feel like is designated to, you know, like a specific craft shop or like markets, craft markets, but like, you know, like the like galleries don't hold craft objects in this, like a lot of galleries outwardly will not
put craft items in.
They're like, this is not for craft, and like when they do, like galleries aren't built to show craft at all. Like
that's a huge,
does not make sense.
Like even our craft council, they had our craft council and our craft library and museum have combined in like recent years, and they had a moth concern earlier this year, and so all textile items got pulled for safety's sake. And so it's like, okay, that absolutely makes sense, and like it's appreciated that you are protecting the textiles, but also it now means that for an extended period of time textiles are gone, and so like all you're seeing is like really beautiful woodcraft and metalsmithing and ceramics, but like all of the textiles are gone right now. And I think you've totally hit the nail on the head of like this, people not being able to see what does modern engagement with textiles look like. That is not like a gigantic either like this super new technology or these gigantic factories overseas, because we've stopped doing it. And like when people, unless they happen to know like a really amazing knitter in their life, when they think knits or they think crochet or they think weaving or they think sewing, all of those like steps once you've produced the fiber, and they don't even like know about the production
All
of the
the
fiber to
stuff,
begin
yeah.
with. But once they get to that point, then they're like, oh well, I remember like the sweater that my grandma knit me. Which, if you actually like think about what your grandma used to do, like my grandma was like old school Polish, like would look at you. She just knit the old European way, which apparently was like look at you, know exactly
All your measurements.
Yeah, exactly, and then like knit you the perfect fitting item, and you might not like the style, but it fits you perfectly, and it's confusing because of the 8 languages that they speak. English is the last one, and they don't know that like a knit in a pattern is a K, and why is there a K? Like, what does that mean? True story. So it's like that's what people think of when they're thinking craft, and they're not thinking like how do they engage with it in a current way and in a modern way, in a way that fits into their lives, whether that they are living rurally and so they need like harder wearing clothes that are going to support them in living a rural lifestyle, or they live in the city and so they need this like look that fits their personality. Like I think that's something that we're also, I mean, as queers then we know it like intrinsically, but even for other folks, they're understanding and recognizing that fashion is hugely impactful in terms of like how you feel about yourself and how you move about the world. And like for some of it's like a lot more of a thing. Like if you're like having a day where gender dysphoria is just like kicking you in the ass and you're like, I don't know what the fuck to wear, and you find like the perfect item that makes you feel functional in the world, then it's like we get it. But even for folks where that's not their lived experience, like there's definitely days where you're like, oh, I need to do laundry because none of the clothes that are in my closet feel like me today, and so I'm gonna do laundry because my favorite outfit is in the laundry right now. So, but maybe it's not your grandma's sweater.
It's not your grandma's sweater. Yeah. I mean, I think that, I think that some craft wear is definitely like moving into more commercial spaces. But it's all very, I think it also depends on like where you are. Like, all cities have like an aesthetic of craft that people are really into.
Yes.
And like that's what sells. Like my mom is constantly like, you should do watercolor postcards of like sailboats. And I'm like, no. And she's like, but you would sell them. Like, you're right, but I still don't want to. You know, like I think that also like plays into it. Like some people's crafts are like really marketable. Which is awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. Like that's a
good job.
Yeah, like that's a skill set, and if that is what you want your practice to be, cool. But it's funny too when like I won't name it, but we have this craft show that is in Winnipeg. It's been going on for quite a while now, many years, and it was started by 2 marketers. They're not makers, they're marketers, and so for years they've like curated this very specific look, which is like very polished. There was a chunk of time where like on the down low, folks that didn't have an aesthetic that matched theirs online just didn't get in because it was going to be harder for them to market, and like that's starting to shift now. And I think I've also seen a number of crafters create their businesses with that aesthetic already built in because they want, that is a goal for them. They want to be in that show and in shows similar to it. And it's that idea of like balancing what's on trend alongside what is your practice. And there's totally, I mean, if you're going to be running a business, then you do have to consider that. Like you can say, fuck the system, I'm going to do whatever I want. But if that means that you're not making sales and so you can't buy groceries, you got to change something or find another job.
I think also another thing that changes that is also like, you know, like the DIY craft movement, and like hobbyists. And which is like, I think it's great. That's definitely, you know, where I started and like was introduced kind of like half-heartedly to a lot of different crafts that I'm now like really involved in. But it also, definitely like changes the landscape for like professional craftspeople. and also like Etsy, and like one of my craft and design history teacher was telling us about this website called Regretsy.
Yes. Oh my god, it's magic.
Because apparently it's down.
Oh.
But she showed us like some really funny images, which I hate laughing at other people's work,
but it's also sometimes you do need to laugh at
sometimes you're like, I need to look at bad craft objects
to feel better about myself. Yeah, exactly. Like, had a really terrible day in the studio, I need to feel like I'm functional.
Yeah.
Oh man. But it is, I mean, it does make it tricky because it dilutes the industry. And so then they've always got this thing of like making sure that there's space for everyone, because we all start out somewhere.
Oh, definitely.
And especially when you don't have a marketing background, like, you don't know what the fuck is going to look good.
Yeah.
But so there's always like, there's space for everyone, but then like, how do you have space in a way where it's not simultaneously like dragging things down and making people be like, why should I pay you that much for that thing when I could get this other thing over here? And you're like, because you understand that that thing is about to fall apart.
Yeah.
And yes, it's handmade, but it's about to fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, I think that, yeah, like there's places like Michael's that like have like these ready to go craft where it's like you just take it out of the box and then you put it together and then you've got a handmade craft object that you made, and like, yeah, I think it's definitely important for people to have like a starting place that feels easy to like get into.
Yeah.
Like it's not intimidating.
Yes.
And like sometimes people need something before, you know, they go and take a workshop. They're like, do I even like this? Like, what is this even about?
Yeah.
But there's no like...
There's no in between, really.
There's no in between, and there's no background to it. You're just like, open it and you like do this thing, and then you're like, cool, I made this thing. I have no idea what it means or like anything about it.
Yeah.
And then you just have this thing that you made.
Yeah, exactly. Which you may or may not like in the end.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, to be fair, a lot of what our own practices are, but it's like, goes a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
I always have to remind myself too that like when this is not your life, like for us it's life, but when it's not your life, then you also, like sometimes you just want to be told what to do.
Yeah.
Like, I still can't crochet for shit, but like I bought a kit in order to make a hat. And I'm like, that is what is giving me the incentive to crochet, is because I want to make that hat. Like,
yeah.
I don't actually care about the
like
rest.
whatever steps you need to get to like where you want to be.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Sounds great.
Yeah.
I would do that.
I feel like we're running low just because I made a mental note of how many minutes were on the card. So before this runs out, while we're in mid-conversation, because I'm sure we're going to keep talking, the final question is, what does the ideal fiber is that actually the question? Two parts. What's the next step for you, which we sort of covered, and then also in your ideal world, what does fiber shed look like to you?
Okay, yeah. My next step, like creatively with my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am working on like setting up some online business things where I'm going to be making like hand dyed and screen printed underwear that's gender inclusive.
Amazing.
Which I'm very excited about with my friends. My collaboration project.
Lovely.
Which I'm very excited about. And I just applied for a bunch of residencies, so hopefully like gonna be jumping around, but like mostly be based here, continue to teach workshops and be involved at Radstorm, and yeah, mostly do like a lot of commission work. Yeah. I just like to make jackets all the time.
And they're beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I also want to get more into weaving, and like I have a goal of learning how to shear this summer.
Cool.
That is like such a dream. And then I'm getting a table loom soon, and we just got a spinning wheel.
Oh, nice.
So I think those are gonna be some like good winter things to delve into.
Make sure you have the right chair for when you are spinning, because otherwise you can fuck your back up. I speak from experience.
I believe it. Yes. Yeah. And my ideal fiber shed would be a world where people understood how textiles are made and respected it.
Yeah.
And you know, like, everyone doesn't have to be a textile artist. Not everyone
Yeah.
has to, like, mend all their things. That's, like, you need people who want to do that and people who don't, so that it, like, it evens out.
Exactly, yeah.
So, like, ideally, I think, you know, craftspeople just, like, can have homes and food and make work and, like, see their dreams come true.
Mm-hmm.
And just, like, I think that my dream would be dismantle capitalism. And,
yes.
Just have, like, more closed systems
Yeah.
of lifespans of textiles
Mm-hmm.
and have people, like, educated.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it.
I like it.
Yeah.
Perfect, thanks. And we'll link to all the things, and I feel like this episode will come out a little later, so you might have online spaces ready by then that we can just link up.
Cool.
Thanks, Hannah.
Thank you.